Thanks for visiting Duckman Cycles VW Garage. I'm your host, the Duckman. Today we're working on my 1956 Beetle, also known as Eleanor, who was damaged by Hurricane Ivan, left outside to rot for 10 years, and I got it after that and it fell apart, so I did the best I could to rebuild it. Anyways, Eleanor's right here, and Eleanor's going to a car show in about 2 days, so I've got a lot of this car to put together in a very short period of time. In fact, Thursday, which is today, I don't have a whole lot of time to handle this, and Friday, tomorrow, I'm expected to be working, and Thursday I'm off, so that's just the way it's going to work out. So I've got a checklist of about 18 different things that needs to make its way onto this car and this chassis before the day is over, because tomorrow I don't think I'm going to have much of a chance to touch it, but I'm not a last minute kind of guy, so I'm going to get as much done as I can today, and if I have some time tomorrow, maybe I'll make a couple of adjustments to a few things. I always like to plan ahead, and I don't like to start sweating on that last day. So, as I said, we're going to continue hammering away at this. There's probably going to be a whole bunch of videos that turn out of this right here, because I'm going to cut them up in a bunch of different ways, so they're going to be released on a regular schedule, so we'll do what I can with what I've got, which is more or less the story behind this car. So anyways, like, comment, subscribe, pluck that little dingle belly down there next to the subscribe button, that way you get updates every time you upload a new video. Don't forget to join Duckman Cycles VW Garage Facebook page. There'll be a discussion on Eleanor, Pook Moped, and the Doodle Bastard, which also needs to make it to the show somehow. But thanks for watching, and if you're interested in emailing me, you had a personal question or something, go ahead at duckmancycles@duckshit.net. Once again, duckmancycles@duckshit.net. Thanks for watching. Stick around. More to come. Well, one of the first things I'm going to do today is I'm going to work on Eleanor's steering shaft. I already cut it off of here, but this end, as you can see, is all stretched out, and I was unable to get this thing to form back into its proper shape. I mean, it just will not budge. I don't know what the hell happened to it or who did what to it, but that's besides the point. But anyway, on one of the chassis that I had, somebody cut off a stub just like this, and it was still attached to a steering box. I don't have any idea why they would have done that, but for a steering shaft, just to get this car to the show, I'm going to weld that new end on here. Just got to find it. I don't know where I put it. I think it might have fallen down on the ground just before I hit the record button. I'm going to have to look around for it, but we're going to get that welded onto there, just like you see right here. I've got the mark where the slit used to be, so it should be easy to get it realigned, and it shouldn't be too big of a deal. I don't plan on driving a welded steering shaft. I really don't much like that idea. It'll probably be fine, but I'm going to replace that in the future anyway, as I said, since this car is not being driven and it's just going to a show. I think a welded steering shaft will be just fine to prove that the steering wheel works. Okay, next thing I gotta get onto is the pedal cluster. The pedal cluster right here is not in too bad a shape. It's very well worn though, and you can see right here in that clutch hook. You see how it's all worn out where the little loop goes through there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get in here with the welder and fill that in a little bit and clean it up. And then we're going to clean down the entire pedal cluster and get that sucker painted. And then, of course, install it in the chassis. I was going to attach a clutch cable, but I can't find my bowden tube, which is another issue. I also need to do something with the engine. It's not going to run for the show. I just don't have enough time to deal with that. But I'm going to finish bolting it together so that way it looks presentable. And once again, get it to the show. I've got a bunch of other things that are on the list, but I think we're going to start with that, and we're going to try to build a video out of just some cleaning up some little stuff. I also need to put the body back on the chassis once I get done with that. That'll be another video all of its own. I just fixed the air shocks this morning. I actually gave them each an independent line, as I had a problem with one of them would leak, and it was always at the T. So I got rid of the T, and each one has an independent fill now. So if one does, let's say, spring leak, the other one will hold the suspension up. And that's the funny thing about Volkswagens. They're so light that you can actually take the suspension completely off of one corner, and you can drive the car on 3 wheels. I wouldn't do it to the rear, but you can do it in the front. So we're going to go ahead and jump on some of the stuff. I got to find that little piece for that shaft so I can get that finished. And this, I think we're going to try to tape it off so that way some of the sand that I'm going to sandblast it with doesn't get into the joints in here. And get the pedal cluster cleaned up. We're going to weld in that little gap in there and then put a nice coat of paint on these things and install them. Okay, bead blaster cleaned those up pretty good. I missed a couple spots. It's a little hard to see through the glass on there. I have to change the film out. So I think I did a pretty good job for a first pass. Additionally, I also welded up that hook. You remember that hook was really, really worn out. And now it's actually a little thicker than stock the way I set it up. I slipped on a clutch cable to make sure it would fit on there, and it looks like it's going to be just fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit it with the bead blaster one more time and hit a couple of the little spots that I didn't get quite so well as I would have liked to, like a little spot right there too. And once that's done, we're going to hang it up and we're going to put a coat of paint on them. Pretty awesome. We're getting there. While we're waiting for the paint to dry in the pedals, I went ahead and did the alignment on the front. I torqued everything. I'm missing a bolt here. Yes, I'm aware of that. That bolt actually has a problem with the threads on it. I have to rethread it and or just chase the threads anyway and put it back together. I don't know why, but that one bolt was just a mongoloid. It was probably cross-threaded back when I got it, but it was never quite right. So anyways, I'll get that straightened out. And if you hear kids screaming in the background, it's none of my prisoners. It's actually a school that's 1 block away, and they're on recess right now, so they get loud this time of day. Looking around here, I gotta go down my checklist and see what else is next, but I'm sure we got something. There's about 18 things to do. Okay, there's the end of my steering shaft. You can see the old one is on the left, and the new one that's going to replace it is on the right. And I don't know how that got all stretched out like that. That was actually the way that I got that car. Who knows? It's anybody's guess. I do know the steering wheel was spinning freely because it wouldn't clamp down on the shaft properly. But this little tip that you see here, I found that on one of the other chassis that I had bought several years ago, just sticking up off the steering box. Somebody had already cut it, and it's perfect for what I need. As soon as I saw that, I got all excited because I could put my vintage steering rod back together for this car show. So yes, this little sucker here needs to go back on the end of the shaft. Now you can see I hit it with a Sharpie, so I got the mark right on it. And I'm going to use this piece of angle iron to square everything up. I'll put a set of clamps on it and hold it in place and get it welded around. But before I do that, I'm going to actually grind a taper on the side of this here, so that way I can fill the bead in the joint. Alright, let me go ahead and hit it with the grinder, and I'll get this thing set up and locked down and ready to go. Alright, we got everything clamped together as I said, and if you look, we got the 2 tapered edges right there just like that, and then what you do is you weld around that, simply fill it in. Not too big of a deal. I've got this piece of angle iron which is keeping everything nice and straight, and it does a pretty good job of that. Got to clamp both to the bench and to itself, and looks like we're pretty well locked down. I'm going to go ahead and hit that with the welder, and then we're going to grind it, and we should have a good steering shaft that we can put back into the Beetle. Well, here we have our completed steering shaft. Turned out pretty good. If I really wanted it perfect, instead of doing the grinding and sanding as I did here, I probably could have put it in a lathe and turned it and you know, had it damn near perfect, but it's good enough, so I think it's okay. I think it's okay. If I put a straight edge on it, I mean, it's probably straight as straight can be, but the weld, I'm sure, isn't flat. I don't care. It'll go in the car shortly as soon as the body goes back on it. Alright, we put the steering wheel back on that end, and that end goes back down to the steering column. Just like that. How about that? It looks so much better already. Honestly, there's nothing changed on the inside since earlier, but... And that's where she comes back out, right up underneath the gas tank right here. And I aligned everything with the stripe on the top. Steering wheel is in line with that, and the steering box has a line on it also on the input shaft. So that way I know that the steering wheel is straight, and the steering column and everything is all aligned perfectly when I bolt it together. At that point, the alignment to the wheels should be proper. There's a little more to it than that. It's of course covered in the service manual, but you guys get the idea. Well, one of the things that I forgot to deal with is the pedal cluster stop. This is the part that stops your pedals from flowing towards you onto the floor. And I went back to the yard and I found a floor pan back there, and that floor pan actually was so rusted that I ripped the section right out of the floor by hand without even using a tool. I just pulled that right out. Anyways, this is the only piece that I need, and of course I need the bolt too. And you know, that bolt looks good enough I can actually reuse it. I'll clean it up. Of course, I'll clean this up and I'll paint it too. But with limited time and stuff going on today, I don't know if I'm going to get paint on it or not. You know what? That's copping out. Let's paint it. Let's clean this thing up, paint it, and wherever time lands today is where it lands. If I have to stay up late tonight, I'm staying up late tonight. I just want things right. Things have to be right. Okay. Well, if you guessed blue was the color of my pedal cluster, you guessed correctly. Still drying, but it's getting there. But should be real pretty. It's a damn shame it's going to be in a place where you won't really get to see it. Alright, and there's my little pedal stop. Ready for paint. I'm going to throw some paint on it now. Also blasted the bolt too while we were at it. So that's nice and clean. Okay, paint. Alright, I've got to install this clutch cable up inside the chassis here. There's a long tube that runs to the back, where it then runs out of the Bowden tube and into the transmission loop over here. And it may or may not push through the Bowden tube. I may have to detach the Bowden tube from its current location. This one I actually snagged off of another chassis. I couldn't find the one I had on here. The one I had was actually in much better shape, but I'm going to be taking this all apart anyway and replacing it. But I don't think anybody's going to notice it at the car show. But yeah, we'll just have to see. But you guys have seen me push a clutch cable through before in one of my other videos, so I'm not even going to bother covering that again. But if you do need remedial, down below in the video description, there's a link to how to replace a clutch cable on a Volkswagen. Of course, it's a lot easier with the body off, especially when you're as big as I am. But, you know, I've covered it before, so thanks, guys. Okay, our cable is in. You can see the little loop sticking out of the tunnel, and it's emerged from the opposite end over here, where it's going to go into the clutch loop. To me, it looks like it's a little short, but we're going to find out as soon as I attach the pedal cluster up there. If it turns out it's a little short, I do have another one that's about 2 inches longer that's actually for the fastback, and that might just do the trick. But this cable that I have on here was supposed to go on this chassis, so I guess we'll just see what happens, but it's going to take me bolting it together to find out. Got my freshly painted pedal stop here. It's a little pitted from being previously rusted, but it should be solid to work. I don't see why not. I've actually used a lot of old ones just the same way. But it goes into this little hole right here on the floor pan. This little guy is what stops your pedals from falling towards you and laying on the floor. So anyway, we're going to bolt this guy right into here, just like this. And we're not going to tighten it down completely, but we are going to snug it up just a little bit, because we're going to have to make an adjustment in it. Once we get the pedals adjusted as they're supposed to be, it's just a matter of sliding this little guy forwards and back. Okay, there's our pedal cluster. It really needs to be in direct sunlight to do it any justice. Yeah, it's already collecting dust. Probably off of my shoe. I actually tested the clutch pedal to make sure it felt right, and it does. So we're good on that. I need a rubber throttle pedal. I had one. I don't know where it's at. So it's just going to have to make it to the car show without one. So not too big of a deal to me. Minor issue. I also discovered, and I really didn't notice it before, but the lever for the throttle linkage is missing. I have another one on another pedal cluster, so I'm not worried about it. But it's just funny that I just noticed it now. So anyways, I'll be pulling it off of the other pedal cluster and painting it blue and pinning it in there later on. Some people are saying, well, why don't you just do this all once and be done with it? Well, because I don't have time. I have 2 days to get to a car show. I got to put as much stuff together on this car as possible just for display. And then after the car show, I take it all back off and finish for my winter project. Well, wherever I have to take it back off. I mean, most of the rear stuff can stay where it is, but including the brakes and stuff, that's all good. The fronts I'm going to make some adjustment on. The whole beam's going to get redone, but the rear end's good. I don't think I'll have to take that apart again. Another small thing completed. Well, I think that's going to wrap up another video, so please like, comment, and subscribe. Pluck that little dingle belly down there next to the subscribe button. That way you get updates every time I upload a new video. Please go ahead and join the Duckman Cycles of VW Garage Facebook group page. There's always a discussion on some kind of Volkswagen project or, you know, pretty much anything motorized. Even if you have just a skateboard without an engine. I'd like to see that too. You know, show me what you built. Show me what you built. No store-bought stuff. I want to see something that you built. It's always more interesting if you built them. If you need help, of course, that's probably the best place to ask questions. If I can't answer them, somebody else will. So please join us over there. And of course, if you'd like to ask me something personal, duckmancycles@duckshit.net. Once again, my email address is duckmancycles@duckshit.net. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.